Hey Manny, thanks for coming to my open house.
Daphne, happy to be here.
I appreciate that. So this is Daphne of Book Save Lives, and this is our first school open house, and Manny showed. And so actually we're gonna do a little literacy healing with Manny. You don't mind?
Not at all.
All right. So okay, first question. I've been really fascinated with this.
Uh,
So I say books are use, how do you fill in that sentence? Books are to you.
the first thing that comes to my mind is portals to others' minds, to
Oh,
other people's minds.
yeah,
Just how, depending on what the material is or what they share, and just the
right.
portal into another. Because I've always said that even though we're so close to one another, might as well be galaxies away from one another as far as our minds go. So when you're reading a book and really getting into it and feeling and hearing someone's thoughts and feelings, I think that's pretty amazing.
That is really cool. Okay. Well, that's a great answer. Have you always felt that way?
Yeah, I guess well, I've always had a hard time just being able to read, and now that I am reading, it's really felt like that more so because
Well,
me being able to be in into the book like I am now.
let's go back though, and let's find out
Hmm.
what was the beginning. What was it like? Why could
Well,
you?
well, my ADHD,
Yeah.
some reason, just from, I'm sure from childhood trauma, I just shut down. I mean, just recently, after all these years, my dad said, I'm impressed you made it this far, my career and everything. Because it's always seemed like I worked harder at not doing things like schoolwork and everything than I did by just doing it. And that was my ADHD. But I got lucky enough and was able to work in the field that helped me uh, excel and
Mm.
still was able to learn but along the way I was lucky enough too, whether it was self-medication or the doctor giving me what I needed to be able to focus. And I'm back to that with just some supplements and whatnot. So it
Yeah.
was just my ADHD dyslexia because my wife is she spells great. She has a great memory, can read, real fast. But I tell her for me, because I'll have to ask her how to spell certain things at times. For me, to look on a page, it's like this. That's all you see. It's so hard to actually see the words.
Right.
So, but now, I feel like if now that I can concentrate some and put my time into it, that's what it's great now.
Well, can we go back to that, what you're talking about?
Hmm.
So, like, what are your first memories of, because just school, so not home, but just school. What were
Just
your
school.
memories of literacy, school, alphabet, spelling, all those things? What comes to mind?
Like I said, before fifth grade, I got A's and B's. And then
Mm,
of course my parents got divorced, I guess, and was much more than just that. But I guess some reason it just flipped a switch that it made it hard I was too dread had peaked out. My dread, just about everything.
mm,
The sun going down, me going home. I didn't know it at the time, but all these things I dreaded.
mm,
I thought I would get nauseous going to school, but once I got to school, it was great. But I realized later that it was the dread going back home after school, that concept. But anyways, it just shutting down to the point to where they put me in resource and it was super easy, right? But being in resource, I had all my other friends in there that really technically needed to be in there. Like I said, I just shut down. It wasn't the lack of knowledge or the lack of the ability to learn. It was just the being able to do the work for some reason. And so when I went in there, it helped me because anytime we got a big, um, you know, I'd breeze through the work, but anytime we got a group work together kind of thing, everybody would turn their chairs around to me. And so
mm.
that's kind of just with me being able to be kind of consumed with helping someone else. Apparently, I had no problem doing the work. That's where that happened. So now that I'm reading and doing things, it feels like more of a reason to help someone else But back in school, I had too much of this dread and just worry and fret, if I quietened down too much. If I was occupied, everything was fine. But it was the quiet part, that really just I couldn't hone in on that. I was afraid of that. For yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, it was a bad place for me to be in a quiet spot.
Okay, I'm going to keep going back to school though.
Sure, sure.
Well,
Yeah,
because
I'm talking about school.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, yeah. But you're saying that when did someone diagnose you with dyslexia?
Um, it might have been seventh grade.
Hmm.
It just because with some of the tests they would be giving me, but then they tested me finally, and they
You're saying that you K through 5, you had great grades
A's and B's.
and did you feel like you could read?
Oh yeah, yeah, I could always read, but it's the state of mind. You know what I mean? It's like getting in the car and all you have is the volume turn up real loud, and you can't even drive. You can't even see because everything's so, you know, intense. It's just this weird, like all your senses are not here. They're everywhere else. It's like an antenna that's just fully just open all the time until recently. I was able to, the doctor gave me something to kind of give me a reference, but I was driving home after the doctor, and I told my wife, I was like, I am so aware of that we're in this car.
Hmm.
That's what I'm talking about. When normally I'm might as well be all over the world at the same time. But then whenever everything comes in, that's how I've been able to read again, read on a more constant,
Yeah.
continuous basis. But like when in school, like I said, I think it just something happened at home that I no longer could or wanted to or to be quiet enough. And I think that's where that ADHD comes from for me, is that being quiet and holding still and focusing, it's feels it was a bit more nerve-wracking, I guess you could say. I'd
Yeah.
rather be off thinking about other things, so I wasn't able to focus in like most.
Why, I'm curious why you are positive that this is all because of home and none of it's because of school.
Be- because there's moments that that it's not that way.
Moments where.
There were moments after and throughout school, depending on the subject or the situation. Just like I said, when everyone turned their chairs around to me, I no
Mhm.
longer had that quiet zone out thing. And now I'm explaining things to people and, sharing and working on it aloud as, reading the books aloud. But I mean, I still had a hard time stumbling with words and still seeing them with the dyslexia part, but I didn't worry about it near as much as I did if I was just trying to sit there and read. And it wouldn't go from here to here.
Mhm.
It was real hard to me to retain it.
Right.
So over the years, learning, I'd either have it, read out loud, or I've also noticed it helped a lot if I had the contrast change. So like on a black screen and white letters, or
Right.
gray screen and white letters, that helped out a lot too.
Right. Okay. So this is why I'm really curious about your story
Uh-huh.
because
Sure.
you seem generally adamant that all of the distress was just at home. But the distress that you're talking about was manifested at school, right? So
Mhm.
the idea is that dyslexia would be something you would have had younger, and it would have affected you. Um, it would have affected you a lot earlier than.
I think other than just the stress at home, but somehow it did change. Like I grew into it. Like as I got older, something happened. You know what I mean? I know there's also the stress, but then there's also the specific that I'm aware of. Like the ADHD is one thing, right? Being able to focus.
Right.
The dyslexia, because it can go up and down. Like if I'm, on Adderall, right? It helps that particular
Mhm.
out a little bit. Like even with my typing, it's
Mhm.
much easier, at times. But here lately, it's better without that part. But the dyslexia is something also. Does that make sense? It's like,
Yeah, no, no, everything that you're saying makes sense, but I'm just, um, your time frame is,
so
there's
with,
something that you're saying that I think are kind of interesting,
oh,
that I
okay.
don't know if you, um, so your parents get divorced, it doesn't go well.
It was they got divorced, but there was a lot of abuse from my mom along the way.
Okay.
So once they got divorced, it really triggered more of
Mhm.
that, you know, mess.
So what I'm saying is you were already experiencing all of this stress,
Correct.
period. Then the stress got worse.
Yes.
Then the stress, you believe, affected school.
Yeah, because I remember, look, the thing is that I started getting straight zeros on my report cards. It wasn't because I was failing, it was because I quit. And then along with the quitting, it was because of a lot of I could no longer, just like recently, I went from out doing work out in the field all these years until 2 years ago, I started doing more clerical work and constant or more continuous CAD drawings, more clerical, submittal stuff. And all my life, I've always had that, dread of having to turn something in, and that made it hard. And so it was just one thing after another. So somehow, oh, go ahead.
No, keep going, keep going.
So somehow,
And
I carried that, and just to take it a step further, I always had this dream all these years up until just recently, I don't anymore, that I show up in school and it's the last day and I'm supposed to take all these tests and I don't even know where we're at. I don't even know what room my classrooms are, but I got, a test in a couple of days. And that's how my life has always been. That dread of not being able to finish something. And so that also goes into that maybe that's where it was hard to read because of all that. I don't know. It was just it all added up, to difficulty for reading. And then I had to find ways to study when I was doing work as a massage therapist to remember how to
mhm,
spell and being able to spell for me for me I would write the long technical word down, right? Anatomy and physiology tests. I would write the word down, but I would never be able to remember it or see it in my head. And just to go a little further with everything else, I don't have what they call a mind's eye, like
mhm,
Fantasia, Phantasm.
mhm. I know what you're saying.
So that, I mean, is another reason that I have a hard time. But at the same time, I can't see people's faces, but I can recognize anyone, if I've seen them before. I can dream up contraptions and just like that little item that I showed you, that PowerPoint.
Yeah, right.
I can imagine things, but I can't see pictures. I can't see faces. I can copy and draw anything, sketch wise, if I'm looking at it. But to do it out of my head, there's no way. So you take all those things that I had happen. It's very vague, but I remember being able to do my work prior to that. Then also I was able to do my work once I was in resource, when things were just much more easier. And of course, coming from a small town, they would try to test me out, but I'd fail on purpose, it was more than obvious. But also that hurt me too was I was the nicest kid in class, so they didn't make too much of effort to kick me out of there.
Oh, interesting. I just think it's really interesting. So actually, for fun, since we're friends, I want to try
Mhm.
something. which is totally different than I would have even guessed
Uh-huh.
because you seem somewhat determined that you have these specific things that are bothering you, right? Like reading's getting better, but right, you don't have a mind's eye, but like you know what I mean, all the
Oh
things.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, these are
tell me about reading now. What's it like?
when I'm reading now, a lot of it is in amazement. Like I usually choose to read as soon as I get up in the morning, even before coffee. I'll go from upstairs, downstairs, get on the couch, and not even turn on the lights. I have this little uh, bookmarker that has a light on it, and I'll just sit there and read for about an hour, I guess, and I still have trouble veering off, but at the same time, as I'm reading, I can feel myself reading, and not necessarily having to have the audio part. I can see myself reading, but then there's this other part that the whole time it's like, wow, am I actually reading? That's how I feel now, reading.
Um,
Like I'm aware of it.
yeah, you're aware of it. So, what are
Nice.
you, when you say veer off, what do you mean?
So if I'm reading, it's real easy to start thinking about something else I need to go
What
do.
though? Oh, go do?
Yeah, like throughout the day, what my needs are throughout the day, I'll
Okay,
just start drifting off
okay.
at times. But
S-
just to focus still,
Yeah, no, I understand. So what
Yeah.
do you think about while you're reading?
When I'm in the zone, I'm
What
just
is
thinking about and when I'm reading in the zone, I'm picturing or I can hear the person's uh like Dispenza. If
yeah,
I'm reading his book, while I'm reading his book, I can hear his voice as I'm reading the book. You know what
okay.
I mean? As I'm reading the words.
Well, okay, you did just say I picture, so what were you picturing?
Oh, if he's describing a brain or the picture of a brain or something that's descriptive, I can kind of picture it. I can't see it, but I can picture it. You know what I mean? If she's talking about one of the ladies that lost her husband, and
Right.
sometimes whenever he's talking about she's in the living room or something, I can see it like if I had seen a movie. You
Okay.
know what I mean? So that's being present for me.
Okay. I was thinking, I mean, you're saying picture, but then you're telling me you can't picture. This is there's a couple things I'm gonna ask you to do.
Uh-huh.
Maybe if you don't mind.
I
Okay.
don't mind.
Is I want you to consider what you're saying and what you actually do.
Okay.
If it's possible you don't actually do what you have decided over these 40 years that you did, that
Okay.
maybe you're wrong about your ability, perhaps.
I
That
feel wrong. I feel wrong because I don't know how I got here with all this that I'm telling you
you
about
see
that
what I'm
I'm
saying?
aware of.
Yeah,
But I
right.
don't know how. I don't know how I'm an engineer, all these after all these years. I don't know how I've come up with all these things and you
That's
know,
what I'm saying.
yeah.
So what I'm saying is maybe you've told yourself
Hmm.
a story that's
Maybe.
not
Yeah.
true
Could be.
because you're very accomplished for someone who can't. You
I
know what I
know.
mean?
I
So
know. I don't it's like am I just not aware of it or am I just processing it differently than I
I
should?
want to talk about school trauma.
Uh-huh.
Is it
Okay.
possible that you were convinced of things in school and just instead of focusing on what you could do, for some reason you focused on what you couldn't? And then the couldn't got bigger. So someone said, you just couldn't concentrate because your mom just flipped out on your dad. And then you got to school and you told the teacher, I just can't concentrate. She's like, oh, there must be something wrong with you. When really, all she needed to do is say, hey, buddy, you're going to be fine. Do you want to see the counselor? What can I do for you?
So I think we can go to that point. What
Mhm.
happened exactly in fifth grade was I got a teacher, her first year of teaching, Miss Mason. She was crying all the time. She was, the kids in the class, they just were, when the teacher's a pushover, she
Mhm.
was having to go get the teacher next door, Miss Marshall. And,
Right.
and it was all about that time. And like I said, what teacher would allow a kid to have, six weeks of zeros on this report card and then not have gotten it signed, right? So it was just one of those things where I'm sure it's exactly what you're saying. I went through this, and then they, instead of discussing it, they just took me out and put me in this room.
That's what I'm saying,
You
because
know,
there's nothing about your story that I would have ever said, oh, this guy's got dyslexia. Like, if I
right.
was your sixth grade teacher, I'd say, well, have you met his mom? Come on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
no, it was so separate. I still live my life like that too. Now that I think about it. My house, my home was my way over there, even though we were only 2 blocks away from them. But
okay.
my school was totally different. And I lived my life that when I told you little stuff before my wife, but I lived like that too. Now that I think about it, I had,
Okay. And that separated you as a human.
mm-hmm,
So my friend Eddie, that the one I told you about in Dallas, he calls it that you're the captain of your ship and you got knocked off your ship. Well, you got knocked
mm-hmm,
off just by living with your mom, probably.
mm-hmm.
And then you got knocked off further in fifth grade, and then you got this terrible teacher. And so now here you are 40 telling me stories that don't
50. I'm 50.
50, my bad.
That's
I
okay.
had your wife, I had your wife at 54 now, and you were 40. That's where I knew there was a 14-8, but I forgot.
No
Okay.
worries. I'm just
So
letting you
the
know.
point is that what if those are not true? So I would like you to consider that none of that's true,
I
that
hadn't
you
thought
really
about it.
are an exceptional reader. You've been an exceptional reader the whole time. You can picture things and you can read at a high level. And sometimes it's easier if you have a black background than a white one. But generally, what if those things were put into you and you were programmed, like Joe Dispenza would say, right? And what if they're not true? What if it was just bad timing, family stuff, terrible teacher, boom? What if?
Well, apparently you must be right because if I did have that specific things that I normally have throughout the day, right? And it's just difficult at times.
Yeah,
But in the mornings, now that I'm meditating and focusing, and it's different. Yeah, and I see your point. I mean, to go, whether that's because of the supplements I take now that help me with that stuff,
right, right,
it just helps with the flow of, and
right,
that may have been a lot of it too, just a lot of different, the chemistry, the timing, the needing a little more um, uh, help wherever it needed to. I just didn't. You're right. I just didn't get the help, and now that I'm so set on focusing on being my own help right now, that I think, now that you're talking about it, yeah, it is a tons easier to read compared to what it's been over the years.
right. I mean, there's a lot of factors, but so
Mhm.
what I would like you to consider until we're going to have to do this meeting second
Okay.
part two, because part two is
Okay.
going to be really interesting. So you're going to have two assignments. One is
Okay.
just go back with a different lens.
Sure.
Go back with a different lens and
No,
consider
no.
if you had had the teacher of the year, what would have happened in fifth grade instead? Could it have gone differently? And do you think just having teacher of the year that says, oh my God, Manny, I heard what happened. Hey, let me know what you need. Do you want to come in at lunch? You can eat lunch in here, no big deal. And how would that have affected your actual learning? Would you be telling me that you have dyslexia if you had had teacher of the year? And was that first year teacher so bad? And it was just a perfect storm of home and teacher that it just knocked you completely off your ship.
Yeah, no, I totally, somehow along with that, everything you just said, that would have been great. But I think at that point, when I started hiding my report cards, and I did wind up, and just like my dad said the other day, and there was a lot of things I did to get out of doing the work,
Mhm.
you know, like say my senior report, I started working on it. And as another thing, I guess that I have so hard like that little item that I showed you. I've
Right.
always had a hard time uh, finishing something. Didn't matter what it was. I think
Right.
a lot of it was because I got critiqued quite a bit at home, you know.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, it's
I do
not
totally what you're saying now. I haven't never thought about it that way. I haven't considered those things being more of a process condition thing than an actual physical, mental, psychological thing, or more psychological than an actual physical thing.
right, right, more psychological than physical. And then if somebody had just had some more compassion for you, it wouldn't have gone that way. You
Right.
know, been totally different. Okay, so the second thing I would like you to consider is how you read, because this is how my biggest thing about it, and you probably already do, but you didn't say it, so I'm just going to go over it. Then I'm going to ask if you could see what happens if you read that way. So, what are
Okay.
you in the morning right now? What are you
So
reading?
that one that I was telling you about, I have the last quarter of it, that Joe Dispenza book,
Oh, that one. Okay.
Years
I'm in love with
Supernatural. Uh-huh.
Eckhart Tolle.
Oh yeah.
Have you read him? The
Not
Powerful.
yet. No, no, but I
Oh,
want
dude. Yeah. I'm in love. I'm
to.
okay.
I
So,
listen to a lot of his stuff on YouTube,
oh, do
so
you? Oh, okay.
I'm aware of it, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. His
Okay.
his power now. So, do you the way that you told the story, how you read Joe Dispenza, do you think of you?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. So tomorrow morning,
Hmm.
see what happens if whatever the sentence is that you're reading, you think of how it directly applies to Manny.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can do that.
Yeah,
I
like
have never done that, but yeah, I can do that.
yeah, every sentence, think of Manny, just
Okay.
how it applies to you. Like I have my table's too low.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you an example. This is one of my favorite books to do with kids because
Uh-huh.
uh, angry teens are my specialty. So
Uh-huh.
it's called The Hate You Give. So the first sentence says, now it's obviously written differently than Joe Dispenza, but this is the same idea. The first sentence is, I shouldn't have come to this party. So when I read that, I immediately think of that meeting I was just telling you about where I didn't belong there. And I'm like,
You're right, right.
now looking back, of course, I learned something. But every time I read that sentence by this girl going to a party, I think of that meeting I went to that I wish I would not have gone to. So when I read that sentence to you, what does it make
Sure.
you?
You, you, you saying it or you reading it.
Oh, okay.
When I hear it, that's how I see it.
Okay, now try for you though. You directly think of you. Where have you been that you didn't belong?
You want me to say it out loud?
You don't have to, but if you would, find something that you can say out loud, I guess.
Oh, no,
Like,
no, no, no. I'm
oh,
just
okay.
asking, do you want me just to
Yeah,
take a
yeah.
time
Could you
that
just, yeah, I want you to think. So I shouldn't have come to this party. Like any place that you shouldn't have come to this party. Like, what does it make you think of in Manny's life? I shouldn't have come to, I shouldn't have been at, why did I go to, kind of thing.
here recently, my parents' house.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so next sentence. And you could talk more about that, but but you have
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just saying when we
okay.
were talking about earlier, like, why
Yeah,
did I come today? That kind
exactly. Okay. All right. That's how you do this. Okay. So I'm not even sure I belong at this party. Okay. So now you might continue with the thought of being at your parents' house, or it might jump to another thought. But still, I'm not sure I even belong at this party, which reminds me, because you talked about your parents, is that Abby once asked me if we were adopted. I'm like, because my step. Anyway,
of.
so does it make you think of anything? That sentence,
About,
or still like I don't even know if I belong here. Like, did you feel that way when you were at your parents?
yes.
Right?
Yeah, because I no longer, instead of entertaining, I no longer felt I could just be myself, right? I was
Yeah.
always so focused on them being okay,
Right.
right? Just saying stories and laughing. And I didn't find myself doing that anymore. I was listening, but then I also wanted to say different things, but then it didn't flow with the conversation anymore.
Right.
You
Right.
know what I mean? Like me, when you and I talk, I can feel that. I can speak about me, but the last few times between my brother and my dad, even my dad, subconsciously, I told him how happy I've been. And then the next two visits, he was kind of like snippy and
Oh,
irritated. And it's like, it's just those weird dynamics. But like I said, I've been trying to talk to even my brother the same way I've been talking to you, but it doesn't go doesn't go well. You
right.
get this
Okay.
weird energy back from them. And it's like, okay, well, I can't even discuss what they're doing right now or what they're saying, much less find anything to rebuttal with or tie to it. So yes, everything that you just said, I'd like
That's
gingerly along here today.
That's how we read. That's
Okay.
how I think we should read. So
Yeah,
think
yeah.
about it. Like I'm doing that with a kid, and we just read two sentences and talked for 10 minutes, And the kid's like, wait a second. I'm like, I know. That's how we read. Now you didn't forget the two sentences. You won't forget about them at all. You're gonna remember the two sentences as you keep reading. You just
Oh
keep
wow.
straight.
Yeah, because now with those two sentences, that's all I can see. Referencing that whole episode
Yeah.
of being at my dad's house. That's
Isn't that
wild.
interesting?
That's it as well. I won't forget that. I won't
Okay.
forget those two sentences because it relates to.
And
Wow.
they're perfect, right? So now tomorrow morning, when you're reading Joe Dispenza, which you've never read this way, see what happens.
Mm-mm. I'm too still like focused on the other person. I've
I
never been included in the whole thing.
I have been to. I have been. So just let that go. You're going to
Right.
start fresh tomorrow,
Yep.
thinking about Manny as as the
Wow.
reader, and how you are interacting with those actual words and how they speak to you about you in your life.
If we were talking this about this 6 months ago,
Mhm.
there would have been no way I could have, because of the last 6 months, I've been able to or had a hard time separating, helping everybody else out, and
Mhm.
then being secluded in the house, and the situation with work, and you
Mhm.
know finding out things and feelings and everything else, that I'm all of a sudden focusing on me. For a while, it was real hard,
Well,
real hard. But now I'm finally seeing what you're saying, and it'll be exciting to try that in the morning.
I know I can't wait to find out. The thing is that and I know we're just here and this is where we are and this is where we're supposed to be. So I wasn't supposed to meet you 6 months ago.
No,
Angela,
no, no. I'm just saying
yeah,
how incredible that is
right.
now. Because I would have been, that wouldn't need, it might as well tell me to fly to Mars.
I, that's funny. Angela told me she wouldn't have understood what I was saying a year ago. And
Yeah.
I'm sure I wouldn't have understood a whole bunch of people, whatever
Oh,
they're
yeah,
saying
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
year
yeah.
ago.
But I'm just
But
saying
like
it's great
here
timing.
we are. I know. It's so exciting.
It
So
is.
okay,
No, thank you for that.
I'm gonna stop the recording there and we're gonna
Okay.
part two is gonna be exciting.
All righty. Yes.